I'm Steve Adubato. This is the Tisch WNET studio here in the heart of Lincoln Center, New York City. Everything you ever wanted or needed to know as an American citizen about the impeachment process, you're about to find out. That's a lot of pressure. So. This is Nick Akerman, partner at Dorsey Whitney, but also former Watergate prosecutor who understands more about this impeachment process than anyone. We are taping early in December. We're not a news program. We're a program that likes to put things into context. Do this for us. We don't know how the House is going to vote. We could assume. We don't know what the Senate's going to do. We can assume. Bigger picture, what are the implications of this impeachment process if it plays out the way I just described?
Well, obviously, this is an extremely important process, but you have to look at it in terms of the bigger historical picture, starting back with Andrew Johnson in the late 1860s. Basically, that was written up in John F. Kennedy's book, Profiles in Courage. And the one Republican senator there who wound up casting the vote that sort of nullified the impeachment.
Make it clear, you need 2/3 of the vote in the Senate to impeach.
That's right.
And they were one vote short?
One vote. He took away the one vote from the 2/3 that meant that Andrew Johnson was not removed from office. And the principle he based that upon was that he felt that it was just a political difference, that what Johnson did not undermine the Constitution, did not undermine the U.S. government. It was a policy difference. And now I think and certainly if you go on to the other impeachments you've got after that, the next one that comes up is Nixon.
Yes.
Now that was a whole different story. This is another president who essentially cheated in getting himself elected by having a bunch of burglars break into the Watergate complex, Democratic headquarters, steal documents. He misused his office in a whole series of different ways.
Sound familiar to you?
Yeah, I mean, this now is really what we had here was a high-tech burglary where the Russians essentially hacked into the Democratic National Committee. They didn't have to use burglars. But putting it in the bigger picture of what Trump is actually accused of in this situation, it really comes down to an extortion bribery scheme, where essentially what he has done is taken $399 million in aid that was
approved by Congress.
Approved by Congress.
Taxpayer dollars.
Right, to defend the Ukrainian government against an active, ongoing fighting war where the Russians are basically killing Ukrainians and trying to take over that country. And what Donald Trump did was use that money as leverage to get the president of Ukraine to announce that he was opening an investigation, one, into Donald Trump's chief political rival, Joe Biden.
As we do this program, we don't know what's going to happen in the campaign. Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't know. But
the assumption...
But assumption at the time was this was his chief political rival.
And whether Biden becomes a nominee or not, irrelevant?
Totally irrelevant.
From a legal and from a impeachment process point of view?
Totally irrelevant.
Go ahead.
Totally irrelevant. And the other thing he was trying to do was get an announcement of an investigation that the Ukrainian government was investigating this company,
Burisma, where, in fact, Biden's son was a board member. I don't know how he was making $50,000 a month. That's not relevant to this case?
Not at all.
Go ahead.
Not at all. Because there's no proof that Joe Biden or his son did anything that was wrong. I mean, it may have didn't look good, but nothing that was wrong. The other thing he was trying to get an announcement of was an investigation into this debunked conspiracy theory that it was the Ukrainian government, not the Russian government, that hacked into the Democratic National Committee.
Debunked not in the minds of a whole range of Republicans in Congress and American citizens who still are very supportive of President Trump and believe Russians, Ukrainians. What's the difference? They're all involved in it.
You can believe in the tooth fairy, too. But the fact is, nobody has come forward with any hard evidence that there's any truth to it. In fact, there are 10 Russians, or maybe 12 Russians, who've been indicted by a federal grand jury in Washington, D.C. for hacking into the Democratic National Committee. And all 17, 18 national intelligence agencies all come out saying it was Russia that hacked in, not the Ukraine.
By the way, listening on the audio side, Nick Akerman, Watergate prosecutor, also a commentator on a whole range of national networks on this. We're glad to have him here. Question. To put this in context, I tell you, we do analysis. We tried to provide context. So this could be seen later on in 2020. How do you see, Nick, the role of the media? The media different in the early, mid-'70s when you were involved in the Watergate situation, as opposed to right now? There was no social media.
Right. It was really just 3 networks. Everybody got their news sitting around watching Walter Cronkite or one of the other 2 big networks.
So here's the thing. How much different is the, quote, impeachment process today, 2020, with all the media landscape what it is, the digital world that we're living in, social media being so dominant, as opposed to 1973-4 during Watergate?
Yeah, oh, it's completely different. I mean, just as you described it, because you've got all these disparate sources that people are getting. A lot of them are partisan sources that just sort of spew one viewpoint or make up facts. I mean, that's part of the problem, is that a lot of these facts are just made up that are out there on these different networks and on these different social media sites. I mean, that was part of the problem in the 2016 election, that you had the Russians interfering to the extent of providing false information, such as this idea that Hillary Clinton had some kind of a child porn ring going at a pizza parlor.
Does Facebook have more responsibility than Mark Zuckerman says they have to be monitoring what's going on there? He's not the only one.
Absolutely, and he's not the, you're right, he's not the only one. Exactly.
There's just a prominent one.
All right, exactly.
Mark Zuckerberg, I'm sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, my bad.
But even on social media, I mean, if you're going to put an ad on TV, the person who's responsible for that ad has to get on and say, I'm responsible for this ad, I back it up. The problem is you didn't see any of these ads with Vladimir Putin saying that, you know, I approve of this message and I'm responsible for it. You didn't see that. It made it look as though it came from ordinary Americans.
Nick, let's assume, you see this in March, February, April, et cetera. Let's assume the House votes to impeach. The Senate, it doesn't happen because the votes aren't there for it. The Republicans control it. Let's assume, how do we move forward from this as the republic that we are in a healthy, productive way to deal with the issues we have to deal with in Washington and in this nation? Loaded question, I know.
Well, you've got two sets of issues. First, you've got this whole set of issue about Trump's criminal activity. If the jury of the Senate doesn't convict and
let's say they don't,
then it's up to the people and the electorate to do it. So this is going to be an issue that will be fought out with the entire jury being, the jury pool being the entire United States.
How about if a significant part of the American public says, you know what, an issue, not the issue?
Well, it's obviously not going to be the issue. There'll be a number of issues. Healthcare is going to be high up there. Jobs is going to be high up there. But this will clearly be an issue.
And if Donald Trump, sorry to interrupt, if Donald Trump were to win, you're not here to do political prognostication.
But I could try.
But here's my thing.
Right.
Say he wins. And a significant number of really smart political analysts believe that. If he does, what message do you believe it sends, Nick Akerman, about the impeachment process, the rule of law, loaded question, and the future of the presidency?
Well, I think the real question is the rule of law. I mean, it sends the message that a president can go out and recruit foreign governments to help him in his election campaign, whether it's an election campaign or a re-election campaign. And that's what's really dangerous here, because the rule of law hangs in the balance on this next election.
You worried?
Yeah, absolutely, because we just don't know how it's going to come out at this point.
The Nixon situation, I don't want to open up the Pandora's box. Nick Akerman, research and Google him. He was a key player in the Nixon impeachment proceedings. By the way, if you also go on our website, steveadubato.org, I'll tell you this before we get on the air. Look up Congressman Peter Rodino, R-O-D-I-N-O. He chaired the House Judiciary Committee hearings. Our longtime director, Bob Morris, knows how many times we interviewed him. He was a key player in this.
Right.
Put what's going on today in context, what was happening in the early 70s with the impeachment process. Nick, I want to thank you for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you.
All the best.
Yep, it was great to be here. Thank you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Holy Name Medical Center, the Russell Berry Foundation, New Jersey Sharing Network, New Jersey Resources, Delta Dental of New Jersey, United Airlines, Adler Aphasia Center, and by Berkeley College. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and by New Jersey Monthly. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.